What's going on? Welcome to another Eastern Current Fishing podcast. It's an exciting day here. We've got, from our very first episode, we've got our buddy Luke Donay back. A lot of y'all have been asking for us to bring him on with North Carolina Flounder season quickly approaching. And there's no one that knows Flounder, at least in my opinion, like Luke Donay does. So we're excited to pick his brain today and maybe learn a little bit of his secret skills, his little Flounder whispering skills. So I know, listening to the first podcast we did with him, not only was I just so intrigued the whole time, but I really do feel like it opened my eyes up to how to be a better flounder fisherman. And a year later now, just about a year later, I feel like I've become a better flounder fisherman. But that might be because there's a lot of flounder around this year. Maybe I am becoming a better flounder fisherman. We'll never really know. But if you haven't checked out Eastern Current Fishing on Facebook, go check out that group. You can just communicate with other listeners and share your fishing stories, your fishing pictures, and hopefully find some other people that you can get out in the water with in your local areas to go fishing together. Also, if you do love Eastern Current, please check out our Patreon page. We've got extra content on there, and you can help support us financially, which is a huge blessing. But that's enough of me. I'm going to bring on our guest, Luke Donay. What's going on, man?
Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, we're doing good. I remember this was a little less stressful setup than the first time we went on. And we were going live on the first episode, and we were having a connection problem. This was way more laid back.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I remember that first time. It was like Skype didn't work, phone didn't work, nothing worked. Life was crap. Right. It's all good. Yeah, this is easier.
This is so much easier. I've stopped doing the live just because it's so hard with a baby to be like, yeah, I'm going to do Tuesdays at 8. And then it's like, sometimes Tuesdays at 8 are great. Sometimes Tuesdays at 8 are not great. So just recording when we get a window too.
I know it.
How's fishing been for you this summer?
Man, fishing's been great. Obviously we can't keep any flounder, but the flounder bite's been on fire.
Yeah.
I think we were just talking about this earlier. I think, we had a tropical system that kind of came through earlier this year. So I think it kind of pulled the fish a little bit more compactly. They didn't spread out like they normally do when they come in off the offshore wrecks, in the late winter, early spring. Normally they start kind of coming through, and you feed through as they come in and hitting those different spots. But we had that early season tropical system that came and dumped like 13 inches of rain inland. And most of the time when I'm river fishing or creek fishing, fresh water is one of those things that can really push them out of there. So that first system, I think, really kind of kept them at bay, and in the mouth of the river, and the mouth of the inlet and the intercoastal waterway, and they just didn't matriculate all the way up into the areas that they normally do. So right now they're pocketed up pretty heavy, so it's makes it kind of nice.
Yeah, it does. Schooling flounder is definitely a benefit. Schooling any fish, when you can find an area that's holding the majority of those fish. That is funny that you say that. It feels like a lot of the fish I've been catching have been in certain zones as far as flounder go, and the redfish even. I mean, the redfish are a lot more freshwater friendly, but it seems like when we get those big rains, it does kind of concentrate them more at the inlets or the river mouths. I did notice after the storm we just had, it was like we didn't get much local rain to mess the river up, and so the water was pretty good. But now it's kind of getting dirty. I've noticed the past 2 days have been a little dirty. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah. And normally when we get that rain, it kind of turns that river water into that dirty tea color. So if you got tea that's been in a glass that's been sitting there all day, it kind of is that opaque type of, and then that's how there's that kind of tea. Well, that kind of water. But a lot of times, because I predominantly live bait fish, the hardest thing is to be in that. It's not that the fish aren't necessarily there. It's just your live well pump on your boat is recirculating that top layer of water, which is nothing but fresh water, so it kills your bait. Even though that lower level has nice salinity in it, it's like it just kind of kills you on the live fish. And so sometimes you got to break out the old artificial to try to get to them. But even on that front, I noticed that even if that water is like that and its salinity's down there, I just get out of it and try to find clearer water and more salinity, and you'll find the fish.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Well, let's talk a little bit about the fish. We were kind of just going over how we're gonna break this podcast down. But you have a lot of knowledge of the flounder and of the flounder here in North Carolina. So do you want to kind of take us through kind of that fish, kind of the habitat and the anatomy of that fish?
Absolutely. So North Carolina is the only state that has all three species of flounder. Okay, we have southern flounder, we have summer flounder, and we have Gulf flounder. So the difference, there's an easy way to tell it. So all flounder have spots, right? So,
right.
but believe it or not, a lot of those spots are actual camouflage. It can change those colors and change those splotches, and so it looks like it's spotty all over. But there's certain spots on the flounder that can't change. And on a southern flounder, there are no spots. Like if you just put that flounder on sand for like a day or so, that thing's going to look just like sand with no spots on it, right?
Wow.
But if you put a summer flounder on there and you say put it on sand that's like super light color, there's going to be 5 distinguishable spots on it, and it'll look like a spot within a spot. And so there's 5 spots on that fish. And with a Gulf flounder, there's 3 spots. And there's kind of other ways to tell with the hearing line and jawbone, but really that's the easiest way to tell.
Is the spots.
Yeah, but for the most part, we'll be talking about southern flounder today, because I think that's around this area, pretty much what people are targeting. You'll get summer and Gulf, but most of the time you'll get them in the ocean. Those are ocean fish. They rarely come in past the inlet. Whereas, southern flounder, they go upwards of 60 miles offshore to breed, and then they'll make their way back in and come all the way up, even past downtown Wilmington.
Wow.
In fact, my biggest flounder was caught up past downtown.
Wow.
And so, you don't think they get up there. Believe it or not, they do. They do. So
I've heard. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
real quick, I've heard stories. Weldon, North Carolina, where people go striper fish. I've heard guys guys catching flounder all the way up there in Weldon on the Roanoke River, which is crazy.
Wow, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I really wouldn't doubt it. I believe honestly that there's a subspecies of flounder that. Sorry, I've got my dog.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, it's like you've got a little child and I've got a puppy. So I think there's a subspecies of flounder up there, because when they say that they have to go offshore to breed, and I'm still catching them in early January when I'm sitting there and fishing for trout,
Right.
I think that there's a subspecies up there that don't migrate. I think they breed up there, but that's just a personal opinion of mine. But there is, there's some big flounder that can get up there in that river, and a lot of people just don't go up there and fish them. So I think they just get up there and get fat.
Just hang out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you tend to find that the rain, like we were saying earlier, when it does move them around, does it seem like a certain amount of rain or salinity change, like that you kind of key in on, where you're like, I'm not going to go fish this, I'm going to start looking in a newer area closer to salt water? Is there any type of pattern there?
I taste the water.
Yeah.
If I taste salt, I'll fish it. But if it just tastes like full on fresh water, I don't even mess with it.
Don't mess with it. Gotcha.
Yeah. It's like, even if there's just a little tinge of salt, I'll fish it. But if I sit there and taste it and it's just solid fresh, I don't even mess with it.
Don't mess with it.
Yeah. But to me, it's more even than salinity, it's clarity. One of the biggest thing that you can take out of flounder fishing, even though in the river you think, well, it's all dark water. Yes, but you can still have 2-3 feet of clarity, in the river. So even though the water's dark, it still actually can get pretty clear. Right. So, you want that water to look like a coffee color, not like a latte,
Right.
And so, you want that good clarity of water to sit there and look for those fish. So when you're sitting there looking for the different patterns, and you're looking for eddies, and you're looking for current, you're looking for everything you would normally look for, the one thing I look for is clarity. Yeah. That's the first thing. If it's not clear, I'm gone. It's like, because there's just no way. Even if you hit it on top of the head, man, they're just not chewing. Yeah. If not, just not even there. They're not a fish that one is going to normally. A southern flounder really won't chase a bait down. I've had summers and Gulf chasing bait down offshore. I think for the main reason there's so much more competition out there, they're not afraid to give up their location. But man, southern flounder, just like a lot of southern gentlemen, are pretty lazy. They're going to sit there, they're going to eat, they're going to get fat. That's pretty much all they're going to do. But they're not going to waste too much energy and giving up their spot, to chase a band down. I almost say that they're like a rattlesnake. They'll strike, with a couple feet, and then just sit there. Clarity is definitely key. That's one of the biggest things I look for.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would have to agree with that, just from a visual standpoint. Like the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, I was pulling lower river, pulled one bank on one side of the river that was really clear. I mean, clear for down there, and I spooked a ton of flounder off of it. I was looking for redfish, but we kept mudding flounder off the bank and some nice ones. Then I went and fished another bank that was muddier. It was on the other side of the river. It was catching a lot more of that water, that dirty water coming down from upriver. Still clear enough to see and to seeing a redfish, but we didn't spook any flounder off that bank. And it's another bank that I catch flounder on. And so it was cool to see that, after you saying that, the clearer water, maybe it was a coincidence, but I think that, those fish don't move, like you're saying, very far. So they want to sit somewhere clean where they can see that bait well and eat it, I feel like, So, let's talk about, you've got clean water. Say everything that you like to fish is clean, or the whole river's clean. What do you start to look for as far as a spot to go? I'm not asking for your spots, obviously, but like what are some of the things you look for to hold flounder into fish?
Right. So a couple things. After clarity, I would go with current.
Current.
Gotta have even just a little bit of current. Stagnant water almost never holds flounder. The main reason is because flounder sit still, right?
Right.
Where other fish will sit there and swim in the water column, they will naturally pour that water over their gills, hence giving them oxygen. But when a flounder sits on the bottom with no current, there's no way for that water to go over his gills to give him oxygen,
Gotcha.
Right? So it's got to have a little bit of current. Second thing is structure. I love structure. If you're not losing rigs, you're in the wrong spot. I know a lot of people like to drift the inlets, and a lot of people like to sit there and drift the intercoastal. I guarantee you, almost all the time, you're going to get nothing but shorts and maybe a decent flounder here or there for a lot more work than you should be working. If you can find some good structure with some current, because what happens is that not only will the flounder use that for their own protection, but bait fish use it for their protection. They know that. So the flounder, if you can find that section where mud or sand goes up and either meets with an oyster bed or meets with some rocks or meets with a piling, something like that, it's like that's what they like. It draws the bait in, it gives them protection, it gives them cover, and they like that. So definitely clarity, definitely current, definitely structure. Those are definitely three things below the water that you're going to want to look for, whether it's on your depth finder or whether you go out. Say one of the best times to actually go out and do research on trying to figure out where to fish is at a dead low tide. You can see the oysters that stick out. You can see where the channels within the channels are, and you can kind of make these mental notes and then sit there and say, okay, when the tide's a little bit higher, I'm going to go ahead and hit that. It just kind of gives you an opportunity to sit there and kind of give you some extra spots and extra things to look for. So after that, if above water, say you haven't fished an area before, and you just want to go out and just hit in places, on the river, and same thing with the intercoastal waterway, we have the spoil islands, right?
Yeah.
Probably the easiest things to do to try to find flounder is to hit the heads of those spoil islands dependent on the current. And what I mean by that is so if you have, say the river is flowing south, right? And you have current, the outgoing tide is flowing south.
Yeah.
You're going to hit the north side of that island and vice versa on an incoming tide. And so a lot of people would think, oh, well, I want to sit on the back side of it where, kind of where you get some funky eddies and things. And you'll find a couple fish there, but flounder more like ambush points than they do, some, like I like a good eddy, but the eddy has to be a certain thing, and we'll go into that here in a second.
Okay.
But one of the easiest things to really look for, if you're going out and just kind of, you had an afternoon, you're going to go out and you're just going to go fishing, instead of like taking days to go out and do research, hit the split point of the current on these islands. So like if the current's going from north to south, hit the north side of that island where it splits that current. And then you hit those split points right there, and that is a choke ambush point that they really like. Now on a couple of these islands, you'll maybe have like a little point that comes out from that creates an eddy off of it, and that's just juicy right there. Yeah. It's like you kind of hit that right there. Bait's going to sit there. It hits that island. It's got to go one of two ways. The fish know that, the bait fish know that, everything know it, and they're going to sit there and go down there. So I would hit those first and foremost. That's like an easy way to do it. If you don't know the area and you're just going to go out for an afternoon and hit it, that's definitely something you want to look at.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, that's cool. I like that. So many people think the eddy is the current breaks, but those flounder, they've got the bottom pretty much as a current break. If they got their head right down there on the bottom, they're not having to fight the current too much, and they got first choice at all that bait. All right, so structure-wise, you were talking about man-made structure a little bit and natural structure. Do you have a preference of which you like to fish or which you feel like is better?
So I like natural structure, but you can. One of the neat things too is, especially like you go down on the Intercoastal Waterway, you can see tons of docks, but don't pick out any new docks. Look at the docks that are sitting there super old and broken down and everything, because at the base of those pilings, there's probably twice the size of oysters growing all over that piling. So hit the old docks, not the new ones.
Yeah.
You'll find more structure, you'll find more fish, and more of an established ecosystem down there than you can do. So I do like both man-made and natural. Most of the time I'm fishing natural, because a lot of times I don't fish the Intercoastal just because of the amount of people that are out on the Intercoastal.
Right.
So it's talking about trying to find flounder during seasons as well. I will hit the Intercoastal first thing in the spring because they're making their way off the offshore wrecks. So I'll be hitting the inlets. I'll be hitting the Intercoastal Waterway because they're making their way up into the creeks, into the rivers at that point. So, the first thing of the season, in early, spring and early summer, I'm hitting those mouths in areas like that because they just really kind of haven't made their way up into the spots that I kind of fish for the rest of the summer. So, and then vice versa in the fall when they're starting to move out, to go to their breeding grounds, in October, November, that's when you start hitting those areas again. So, and then on the, of course, those summertime months, get way up in the creeks, get way up in the river, kind of hit all those kind of areas. And so time of year, that's what I will focus on.
Okay. My next question is this, and I think they could potentially go hand in hand, and that's like water depth and then water temperature. Do you pay much attention to either one of those when flounder fishing?
Yeah. I'll tell you, almost all of my double-digit fish, almost all of them have come from fish in less than 1.5 foot of water. Now, with that being said, there always is a drop-off nearby. Okay, those bigger fish have realized, hey, why am I sitting here fighting, all these bait fish in a 6, 8, 10-foot water column when I can sit there and sit in a 1-foot water column and get them a lot easier?
Yeah.
I've seen monster flounder literally skybait out of the water in 1 foot of water, and it's just weird. You think it's like a drum or something.
Right.
It's like a honking
and they usually do a backflip when they do it. They're like, come out and do some crazy backflip. Like, wait, what was that?
Graceful, man. They are not graceful at all. Yeah, they're it's crazy. So, but they're voracious about it. But yeah, they'll find. So if you can find those ledges, kind of like either up against a mud bank. A lot of times, you're in these creeks, and you kind of see a big mud bank flat, and then it kind of like has a slow cascade to it. Maybe there's some oysters nearby, to stay on the deeper side and cast up on that shallower side and working the bait, down off that cascade. A lot of times is where they'll be sitting, but they like a deeper drop off nearby.
Gotcha.
Whether it's because of temperature, summertime those shallows can get pretty warm. And normally if there's a deep drop off, you're probably getting more current as well as, cooler water in there. So it kind of regulates the temperature a little bit. They do get lethargic and pretty warm water. When it gets those dog days of summer, I will definitely, I'll hit those spots, but it normally will be like early morning, when maybe that water temp's a couple degrees cooler. During the middle of the day, they'll go to deeper water for sure.
Okay.
Middle of the day, I'm hitting 5-6 feet of water just because I think it just gets too hot for them up there.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're kind of getting down there because, of course, the hotter the water gets too, the least amount of oxygen that's in there too.
Right.
So you kind of get that dissolved oxygen where it's a little bit heavier down deeper, and that's kind of where they'll be hanging out.
Okay. Do you feel like the light condition plays any role of where they might be sitting? Like early in the morning when the light's low, later in the day when the sun's up? And I know that kind of plays into temperature. It might even be the same thought process, but do you see anything there?
It's interesting. I find, believe it or not, I do better like when it's Definitely sunnier. I think that if I can get either all cloudy day or all sunny day,
Yeah.
I do better. I think it might get a little skittish with that partly cloudy, like cloud going in and out type deal. But interestingly too, along with that, I love a good high pressure system where
Yeah.
it's like you get that bluebird day, low humidity, that high pressure, man. I find that they chew on
Yeah.
that type of. And honestly, talk about wind direction and pressure. I really don't see too much of a difference on that because once again, flounder don't have air bladders, right? So
That's
they don't
true.
have, so the pressure doesn't really affect them as much as say they would a drum or a trout or something like that. So but I do like high pressure, but I think I like a high pressure because normally it's like you get maybe an easterly wind or southeasterly wind or northeasterly wind, and it kind of clears the water up and it goes back to clarity. You get clear water on those days, especially you have days in a row. And I find that they chew more on that. Now, whether it's because of the high pressure or because of the water clarity, I'll throw both in there.
Right. I like that. That's an in-depth look at that, and I think that's what's. And that's what people love so much about your first podcast is it's like when you can find someone like you that's really just dove. Would it be dove or dived? Has dove in head first and really just knows every little detail of a fish and a fishery. Man, that's you for sure with this flounder. Well, sweet. So, yeah, one thing that I've noticed is, and this is just like I catch some flounder, but I don't know them like you do by any means. Like earlier in the mornings when I'm throwing top waters or I'm trying to sight fish if the tide's low, the amount of flounder that I spook from really shallow on the bank, like where you probably would have never casted, is not you, but just where you never would have thought to cast for a flounder is where a lot of these fish are coming from. And another thing that's surprised me lately that I've been noticing is they'll lay right on top of oysters, like heavy oyster bars. They'll lay on the oysters.
They will literally take their fins and force them down and just sit there and just kind of like do this weird little like S walk with their fins pointed on the bottom and just sit there with the fins right on top of that oyster bed. And they're just sitting there chilling.
I know. I wish I had never seen that because I'm going to lose way more jigs because of that. But I'm like, an oyster bed. Let me throw right into it.
Exactly. Hey, like I said, if you're not losing rigs, you're
not in the right spot. That's very true. Yeah, the amount of bait that hangs out all around those oyster beds and whatnot is insane.
They eat it all, man. They eat shrimp, they eat crab, they eat bait fish, they eat they're equal opportunity eaters. They're normally not picky. I would say that the people who ask me a lot, we'll segue into bait here.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's take this into the bait. What you like to use.
Once again, I predominantly live bait fish. People ask me what's my favorite bait. I'll say a big one. I would rather use a bigger bait, no matter what it is, than a smaller, bait that might be a more preferred, mullet or pogie or what have you. I'll take a large pinfish over a small pogie or small mullet any day of the week. Large flounder almost never will hit a small bait. A lot of times if they do, a lot of times it's because of a short temperature change, and that's normally on the cooler side. You'll get in the late fall where you get a big shock. One of those just super cold couple days, and all of a sudden the water temp drops 5-8 degrees. And then all of a sudden they'll hit smaller baits. I think because their body doesn't want to metabolize a larger bait. But normally I'm like, man, I'm using anywhere from 5 to 8 inch baits depending on the time of the year, and I don't want to use anything smaller, because you would be amazed what even a small flounder will try to eat. A small undersized flounder will try to eat a 6-inch fish, no problem. It'll, even though it can't swallow it, it's only got half of it in its mouth, it's going to try to hit it. So always just size is more important than type.
Okay.
But if you're going to have type, right, it's like definitely, I like pogies in the river because they flash more. They give because that water is a little darker and sometimes it's not as clear. More flash is really going to help you out. So I really like pogies in the river, even though they're a pain in the butt to keep alive. And, you get 1, maybe 2 casts out of them, and then you got to chuck and do another one. Pogies. Of course, a lot of people also don't realize we have 2 types of mullet in North Carolina. We've got striped mullet, we've got white mullet. Everybody's looking out right now, and when they go out and they see the big schools on top, those are all white mullet. They only breed once a year. Striped mullet or Popeye mullet breed multiple times of the year at different times of the year. So I always call them manna from heaven. When you have the pogies that are too big and the white mullet that are too small, I'll go after the striped mullet, and in those intermediate times, and they kind of keep you on that right size of bait.
Yeah.
When you, I've got a buddy of mine who sits there and does nothing but fish with croaker. He'll go out and hook and line croaker with little gold hooks and sit there and catch them, 6-8 baits, but he uses like 10-inch fish, and he'll sit there and he'll sit there with these, and he, 9 out of 10 times he won't get anything, but that one time he does, it's an 8 to 12 pound fish.
Wow.
It's like, he's got no problem with that. I like, spot is a really good bait too, because both spot and croaker swim on the bottom naturally. So it's like, trying to keep them on the bottom is not a difficult thing.
Right.
And a lot of times when you pull open a big flounder, it's got a spot or croaker in it.
Wow.
And it'd be amazed. When I used to eat really big flounder, I let all my big flounder go now, but when I used to eat big flounder, I'd cut them open, and most of the time that's what I was finding. I was finding croaker and pinfish.
Wow.
And so, that's what they did. For sure.
I don't know why I've always been scared to fish pinfish. Like my confidence, again, I've never even really fished one or soaked one for very long at all, because I have never gotten that like confidence bite in one that like makes me think, oh, I'll fish the pinfish. But the more and more people I talk to, like it's been a recurring thing lately. There's people talking about the benefit of fishing pinfish. I'm gonna start doing it. I'm just gonna, every time I bait fish from now on, one rod's gonna have a pinfish on it.
Yeah,
easy to catch, hook and line.
Right. Oh yeah, and it's just and a lot of times too, it's just they're more of a pain in the butt to get than same or pogies or whatever. You don't want to spend all your day getting bait. You know?
Definitely.
So, but at the same time, if all you're doing is catching small mullet and all the pogies are way too big, it's like, yeah, man, go after that kind of third type of bait. You know?
Definitely.
Don't be afraid to put some live shrimp down there. Cork some live shrimp over some. You can get just as many flounder as you get trout and drum doing that.
Yeah.
It's like flounder loves some live shrimp.
Yeah, definitely. Well, tell me this: if you're not like just 100% trying to catch a monster, and I know that's always everyone's goal, but like, what is there too big on the bait?
Nope.
There's not too big. Okay.
Yeah. So if I'm targeting, if I'm targeting those 2 to 3 pounders, which normally with my charters I try to do.
Yeah.
Because people want meat, and to me that's the perfect eating size. Anywhere from 2 to 4 pounds, man. It's just like and that's the type I like for them to catch, because those female flounders, they get big, but the bigger they get, the more exponential their egg clutches grow.
Right.
So it's just not like her size is bigger. It's like, it's literally that curve really sweeps up. If you cut open a large, say 8-pound flounder, those egg clutches are like that thick, and that long. I mean, there's so many eggs in those big girls. And so that's why I always try to let those go, because they really, really are the ones that are, keeping the species going. But those smaller, like 2 to 4 pounds, man, that's the perfect type to eat, and so I will, I'll still, man, 5 to 6 inch mullet or 5 to 6 inch pogie is no problem for that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Awesome. So, I think one of the other benefits of a larger bait as well is you kind of eliminate some of the crappy trash bites, like the pinfish and the lizardfish and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And if you go offshore, I'll actually use a little bit bigger bait, because, they're so much more aggressive offshore, and you can kind of keep some of those, smaller sea bass and oyster toads and things from knocking those baits down. So when you go offshore and you offshore flounder fish, man, bring even bigger baits.
Yeah.
It's like, don't worry about it, because every once in a while too, man, you get a cobia, you get a big drum.
Right.
Right. So it's like, bring those big baits offshore.
Definitely. Well, I think that's a good time to transition into the rig. One thing I was doing the other day, I ran out and fished the jetty after a charter the other day, and had some of I have like one tackle box of all my live bait fishing, cut bait fishing rigs. And I didn't have that, so I was limited on my circle hook size and my weight size and everything. So I was fishing some bigger striped mullet, but my hook was too small. So let's dive into the rig and kind of like, as that bait transitions, does the hook size change? Does the weight size change? All that stuff.
Right. Okay. So I would say 95% of the people out there fish with kale hooks for flounder.
Yeah.
I don't, for 2 reasons. One, that flounder is more inclined to swallow it. So if you get a fish that's either undersized or a really big one that you want to let go, it's like it's more inclined to do it harm than good. And so, and I would even be willing to give that up if I just didn't get more on a circle hook than I do on a Kale hook. Okay, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me out there on this. Okay, but trust me, this works, and I'll show you. So one of the main reasons, the other main reason I really don't like a Kale hook is when you're using live bait, especially say mullet, you hook from the bottom and then you go through the top of the head, right?
Right.
Well, as your Kale hook, it sweeps and then it has this real sharp angle on that hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you go up, right, and then you go up top, well, what happens is that Kale hook is not exposed. The barb's not exposed. It's literally laying right on the top of the bait, right? So a lot of times you don't get that hook set, right, that you normally do. And so this is where I believe that old theory of a flounder scales its bait before it eats it. Yeah, that is, I'm going to say right here, that's the biggest bunch of BS. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? But I'll tell you why, because when you're using a Kale hook, that flounder slaps that thing and engulfs it, right? And it's trying to eat it. Then all of a sudden you're setting the hook. It doesn't have an exposed barb. Those snaggle teeth are right there, and it just goes right on out of its mouth. Got teeth marks all over it. It's got no scales. And so I believe that's where that came from. But I can guarantee you there's no way that a flounder can, how's it going to scale? How's it going to scale the bait? It's got opposable thumbs? No.
Right.
It's going to get like a cork off? No. And really, is it going to take the chance of losing that bait?
Yes,
right?
After it's already caught it. Definitely not.
It's like, I can guarantee you take a flounder that just engulfed a fish and you cut it open, and I guarantee you it's got all the scales on it.
Yeah.
Right? So with that being said, I went to a circle hook, and it's really a modified circle hook. So I use the Eagle Claw Circle C, okay? And I use a Carolina rig. Now the Circle C, I'm going to try to come it up and show you here. So this Circle C right here does not have an offset eye. So a lot of times when you snell a hook like this is, you have an offset eye so that hook can pull straight, right?
Right.
Well, by having that snelled that goes over that eye without the hook set, what happens is when a flounder grabs it, you pull it and it pulls against that barb and goes 90 degrees in the side of its mouth. So no more counting to 10, no more sitting there going, oh, it's got it, I'm going to sit there and drink a beer.
Where's the beer? Where's the beer?
Yeah, and sit there and set the hook. No, you can actually just start reeling. Don't hook set it like Jimmy Houston, but sit there and do a nice steady pull and keep that rod tip up and just start to reel. And that thing will literally jackknife in the side of its mouth and get a hook set a lot more often than a Kale hook would. But also it will, it'd be more inclined for that fish not to swallow it.
Yeah.
So, now it'll still swallow it if Rodney takes it. And I call Rodney. Rodney catches more fish than I ever will. Rodney the rod holder. So it's like, you have that rod sitting in the rod holder and it takes it and starts to eat it. There's circle hook's not going to help you on that.
But Rodney's just very patient. Way more patient than you and I.
More patient than I am.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So that's what my hook set does, and I guarantee you'll catch more flounder doing that.
Okay.
Okay. So I use anywhere from 14, 18 inches, kind of depending on the rig leader. I use Missouri 20-pound test.
Inshore and offshore 20 pound.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And main reason I like Missouri is because the diameter of Missouri is actually thinner than most fluorocarbons. And so it's like if you put this 20 up next to, say, Cigar or something like that, it's like Cigar is actually a little bit thicker diameter. So this is stronger yet thinner. Okay. You pay more for it, obviously, but I like that. And then, of course, just go to your regular barrel swivel. And then I go to a slide leader. Now, most of us are using braid now. So it's like if you're using monofilament, don't worry about the slide leader. But if you're using braid, which I recommend, because not for the fish, but for the structure you fish.
Right.
So, normally if we weren't fishing any structure, I'd be going 10-pound test on this and not even worry about it, right? But the heaviness of the rig isn't for the fish, it's for the structure you're fishing. So, once again, 20-pound rig leader, and then I have about 5 feet of a slide leader, okay? And it's 30-pound. I use 30-pound slide leader. The main reason, because if you tie that braid directly to that barrel, that barrel swivel, that it's so supple, a lot of times it wraps all around the egg sinker. The egg can't slide like it should, like a Carolina rig should. So by having an actual monofilament slide leader will allow that egg sinker to really do what it needs to do and not get all tangled up.
Yeah.
You'll get a lot less, the bait will come back around and not get all tangled up in your braid. It's like, it's one extra step, but it's going to save you a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
And so from that, I do a uni to uni knot with 30-pound braid. So 30-pound braid, 30-pound slide leader, 20-pound rig with it.
Okay.
And that's my Carolina rig. And so I actually did this. I don't know if that'll pick it up or not.
Oh yeah.
You can freeze it and see it. It's like you can do it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So that's my live bait rig. And that is, I use anywhere from a 7.2 to 7.6, medium heavy rod. Like I said, it's not for the fish. It's for, it's literally for the structure you're fishing, pulling rigs off structure. And a lot of times you got to lock it down. You get same place you're fishing for flounders, drum hanging around all over the place. So sometimes you just kind of need to lock it up and get them out of there. So that really helps on that front. I use a Daiwa BG 3500. I guarantee you on the spinning reels, I haven't found spinning reels that have lasted this long ever. Like I've had these reels now on for over 3 years when they first kind of came out. And they're still like the day I bought them. Whereas, say a Penn or a Shimano, I always find Penn corrodes and Shimano rusts. But these Daiwas, man, they're awesome.
They are.
Absolutely.
I've got a handful of BGs that I do really like. They're good reels.
Yeah.
The only complaint I've ever heard anyone say about them is they're a little heavy, and that's being very nitpicky. If they're just barely heavier than your Shimano or your Penn. If they're going to last 2 years longer than them, let's go with that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, tell me about this. Crap, I just had a question about. It was something about when you were talking about the redfish, but. Let's talk about this real quick. So, if people watching this don't know, Luke does a lot of custom rod building. Is there anything real specific you look for? I know you said the 7-foot medium heavy, but is there anything else? There might not be, but specific in the rod that you'd like in a flounder fishing rod?
Yeah. So on the line, when you're looking for one on a line weight, I like the 8 to 17 or maybe 10 to 20.
Okay. I
wouldn't go any more than that or any less than that. Anywhere from 5/8 to 1.5 ounce type lure setup. I like a flexible tip. I like a stout but flexible tip. So say like a 4.5, size 4.5 tip, and then going all the way even to like a size 5, 1/2-inch butt. So you've got enough ass in the back of it to really like lay into it if you need to, but you got that nice little flexible tip. So when you're sitting there and you're dragging it, you're sitting there and you'll feel that bump. You know it.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a balance of both.
Okay.
For sure.
Sweet. And one other thought I had about the rig is the weight. Like, how do you decide how much weight you want to throw in certain scenarios?
Use just enough weight to get it to the bottom.
Okay.
Some currents are, going to be heavy enough. Like when you're fishing Snow's Cut, which I hate, but I hate to say it, Snow's Cut carries big flounder.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I hate fishing it. It's like nails against the chalkboard to me
Yeah.
with like that boat trap, get all those boats and just like, but there's a monster flounder in there. I'll use an ounce and a half, in Snow's Cut just to get it to the bottom because the current's so strong. Offshore, I use ounce and a half. But you get up in the river where the current's a little bit lighter, and a lot of times you might have more silt. So one of the biggest problems is if you use too heavy of a weight, that weight drops into the silt, and you're dragging your bait on the bottom, and you kill your bait by just dragging it through the silt. All of a sudden, that bait's, you're creating this huge commotion of that silt cloud. So I'll go upwards of half ounce, 3/8 ounce, tossing, especially if I'm pitching. But if I'm sitting there throwing and sitting, I'd never go any more than an ounce, but most of the time it's like 3/4 to half ounce in the river when the current's a little bit lighter. Like I said, you just want it heavy enough to get it to the bottom, but you got to get it to the bottom.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
it's kind of like you kind of gauge that out.
Now, when you're fishing, are you always sitting stationary and casting and letting your baits sit, or are there times where you're kind of trolling motoring with a Carolina rig and still pitching it and reeling it in?
So a lot of times, like say if I'm going to hit a creek mouth or I'm hitting the point or hitting an eddy, I'll put the trolling motor on lock and I'll sit there and work that area because I know that there's a bank with a sandbar over here. I've got an oyster bed over here. I've got a stump over here. So I'm going to sit there and I'm going to grenade that area by staying in one place. But then if I sit there and I know that, say, if a certain part of the river I've been getting a lot of flounder on, a lot of times they're laid up on those banks, like against either the islands or each side of the river. And so if I've got good current, I've got a decent amount of depth and lag off, I'll take the trolling motor and I'll pitch. So I'll just sit there and kind of stay, and a lot of times with flounder, they're not as skittish as you think. So you don't have to be, 50 feet away and like work in the bank,
right.
Say you might with trout or redfish. It's like you can kind of get definitely closer and really pitch that bait. And also think about this. Once you throw that line out, you want that bait to lift up and fall, and just know that the further you cast it, the less chance, the less ability you have because that angle minimizes.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing this over here, it's just doing this on the end.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, to be able, and of course the depth of the water would matter on that too. So just know that a lot of times, being far away isn't going to really do you, a whole lot of justice. So it's and like I said, they're not as skittish as you think. So it's like to get a little bit closer isn't going to hurt you, and it'll give you a better action, especially on that Carolina rig.
Definitely. I will say, just to echo that, is when I am poling the boat, this keeps being all my reference for flounder knowledge, but they do not spook until you're right over top of them. I mean, the boat has to literally cross over top of where they're sitting, and then they'll spook. I don't think I've ever spooked one more than 3 feet away from the boat. Probably they're waiting until you're right there on top of them. So they might know that you're there before that and be kind of like, all right, I'm safe, I'm holding here, now I'm taking off. But you can definitely get close to them.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
So tell me this a little bit, and then I want to give you the time to share anything that we might have missed. But I find myself and clients a lot of times. I'm fishing a jig a lot, blind casting for redfish, flounder, trout, whatever might be biting, and I've started to pick up on it a lot more. But people miss it where it's like it feels like on a jig sometimes, and if you're pulling a live bait, that all of a sudden you just get this weird weight. Like, do flounder kind of eat it and then follow the pressure off the bank? Because I've noticed so many times where it's like I'll feel like, oh, do I have a fish? And I kind of get it close to the boat, and then all of a sudden it starts digging down beside the boat.
Right. So, and I know a lot of, and this is always like that kind of pardon the pun, fish or cut bait moment, right? You're like, do I start to reel like I've got it, or do I sit there and let them have it for longer?
Right.
And it's like it's that slow pull, and if you got the rod in your hand, a lot of times, flounder can be aggressive on it, and a lot of times they can be pretty lethargic on it. The lethargic flounder a lot of times will hit half the bait, and you don't really feel. Most of the time, you feel the thump when they have the whole bait in your mouth.
Okay.
Their mouth. So when you're sitting there reeling it in and you feel that bam, and then it just stops.
I love that feeling.
It's awesome. But sometimes when you're sitting there reeling, all of a sudden you just got like you're just pulling an oyster and you didn't feel a thump. A lot of times that's when he's got half the bait, So what I try to do when that happens, I'll make my line tight and lift straight up. And then if he sits there and it goes straight back down, okay, he doesn't have the hook yet. Okay, so it's like, at that point, give him a little bit of slack, take the tension off it, give him maybe like 5 seconds, and then just reel down, and then just reel up hard, and then that way, that once again, that hook set, hook's going to get him to the side of the mouth. It doesn't take him long to get that bait in the side, but if you lift up and then he runs with it, he's got that hook. So it's like just start reeling.
Okay,
so a lot of times you'll feel him go back down. And he might, at that point, he might have the whole bait in his mouth, but he's not hooked yet.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of one of those, do I or do I not? But by giving him another 5 seconds or so, it's not going to hurt him.
Right.
Go ahead and just, go ahead and do that. But a lot of time, but if Flounder's got that hook and it hooks in his mouth, he's either going to run or is he going to come to the top and he'll shake his head like a bass. They've got a rapid head shake to try to get rid of that bait. So when you feel that, like that, he's got that hook. Absolutely, man. He's got it in it. He's trying to spit it. That's absolutely. And so when you're bringing that fish in, also when you get it near the boat, keep that head in the water.
100%.
If you pull that head out of the water, you will see that rapid head shake exacerbated because all of a sudden it doesn't have the resistance of the water, and you will see that hook come flying back at you. So it's like keep that head in the water and literally just kind of have them go around in figure eights while your buddy's trying to get the land in that.
Yeah.
And with flounder also, you want to make sure that you net them head first, because if you touch their tail, they're going to go apeshit. Yeah. So it's like absolutely, go in from the head first and from the bottom up, and you'll be just fine.
Sweet. I like it. Yeah, I always tell people, if you have a flounder, keep him a foot, 2 feet under the surface until I get up there to land him for you. People are like, look at this massive flounder, and they're lifting his head out of the water. And then by the time you get there, he's gone.
And a lot of times, a flounder can be very aggressive to the point where you can actually get them all the way to the boat, and they don't even have a hook. They'll sit there, they'll have it clamped down, and they're just kind of following that bait. They're not fighting, they're not doing anything, and they really want that bait really bad,
Yeah.
And so sit there and, because I've seen them just go, but, right there at the boat where they don't even have the hook. They're like, yeah, I'm not comfortable with this. So it's like to sit there and you're just slowly dragging them up to the boat. It's like, man, definitely keep that head in the water.
Yeah.
I've definitely netted quite a few flounder that never had a hook in them.
Yeah.
It's just, be careful on that front.
Definitely. Well, man, such good information. Is there anything else before we close it down that you want to touch on that maybe I haven't led our conversation to?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is something pretty specific to this year. So starting here on the 16th, it's going to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
Everybody and their brother is going to go out and try to get as many flounder as they possibly can. What I do is I've got about 5 or 6 different rotations that I do in areas, so that way I don't try to overfish it. And I want to, definitely throw that out to people as well, as try to find different rotations if you're going out more than once. So that way you're not cleaning out your spot, but also you can give a relief, to some of those fish in that area. We're going to have a lot of people out there trying to get as many fish as they can. And it's, that's just the kind of environment that we were given, by Fish and Wildlife. It's just kind of is what it is. So it's going to not only be mayhem, but it's really going to be one of those things where, we really have to bring it upon ourselves to be as conservative as possible on our catch. And with that, it's, like I said, man, keep those 2 to 4 pounders. I understand, absolutely legal right to keep whatever you want, but man, try to let those big girls go. I mean, they really do make a difference letting those big girls go back in the water so they reproduce. So we really need to work on our numbers so we don't have to have a season anymore.
Right.
So it's, that's definitely up to us as much as Fish and Wildlife, more so even. So that if my leaving thought, I would definitely go with that.
Well, let me ask you this, because I feel like a lot of people have, a measuring stick over like a boga grip or a scale. And I think that eventually it would be kind of nice to have a slot size for flounder, where we do have to let the bigger fish go. If some of these listeners, I think everyone here on this podcast is very conservation minded. If they weren't, they probably left, because I bring it up on every episode, it seems like. But is there a size that you, lengthwise, that you say would be like a safe, like let's say this is going to be our slot for flounder this year? Like, is there a size that you would recommend?
Yeah, so anywhere from, like, I love to keep anywhere from 18 to 22 inch.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good size. You start to get 24, 25 inch on a southern, you're getting upwards of citation size. So that's 5 pounds plus. Anything like I said, above that, I let go. I try to let go. Every once in a while, you get a swallowed hook. You get he gets all beat up. It is what it is. So I'm going to keep him because he's going to die anyway, type deal. But on those larger fish, like I said, man, those egg clutches are so big, they exponentially get big, and they will absolutely just, they're going to do more for us letting them go, those bigger girls go, than they will do on your dinner plate. I promise you.
Yeah, definitely so. And one thing I tell people too is, like, I get taking flounder home to freeze, but if you're near the coast and you're going to have the ability to come out and fish throughout this whole season, don't just stack your cooler up with flounder. Absolutely. I mean, it's your choice, but I'm just going to say, leave them in the water. It's better for everybody. It's better for you long term. You don't need to fill your freezer up. So much of that fish just gets thrown away. And you might be the person that y'all eat flounder like all the time, or y'all eat fish all the time. I get it. Go for it. But if you think there's a chance that it's going to sit in your freezer for more than 2 months, just let them go. That's how I look at it. There's a lot of other tasty fish out there. So
yeah, there is, and they're taking a hit right now because we have.
They are taking a hit. They are, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to go catch a flounder. I'm excited to be able to eat one. But that's going to be my slot, and that's kind of what I've been thinking too. Is 18 to 22. I didn't know where those clutch sizes really jumped up, so that's good to know. Right about that 23, 24 inch range. And a 22 flounder is a big flounder. If you want the dock picture of a dead flounder on the dock, I mean a 22 inch. And that's the thing too, man. Just get good with your picture angles, and you can make a 20 incher look like a 24 incher. And then you don't have to worry about how big he was.
That's right. Look at my Facebook page. You'll see how it's done.
We'll do the next podcast will be flounder picture angles, because it is sometimes a harder fish to make it look the actual size that it is in a picture. So
man. You gotta hide the fingers.
Hide the fingers. I like it. Well, right on, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to doing another episode with you soon. Maybe sometime something not about flounder. So we'll see. We'll see what comes up. But cool. Well, I'm going to close her out here. Well, guys, thanks for checking out this Eastern Current Fishing podcast. We are stoked for flounder season. We hope you are too. We hope that this flounder content we're bringing you is going to help you become a better angler this season. And we will see y'all in the next episode. Later.